Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at this episode of SPS Alumni Conversations. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by two Tisch Center for Hospitality alumni and two incredible entrepreneurs, Arnold and Scott. So just some quick housekeeping. Feel free to drop any of your questions in the Q&A feature, and we'll address them as the conversation unfolds. And with that, I'd love to turn over to Arnold and Scott and get this conversation going. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us.
How are you?
Should we just do this? Oh, we're going into it? Oh, okay. Awesome. I think we're supposed to start with intro, so I guess I'll go really quickly, and then maybe Scott, you can go right after. But it's really an honor to be able to meet you all in this screen. It's been a really incredible journey for me personally as an entrepreneur, if you want to call it that. And I'm really excited to talk to Scott today as well about his journey. But in terms of just like my bio, I think, I moved out to LA 2.5 years ago, a year and a half ago, actually. And, throughout my life, I've always been a restaurant kid. So my dad was in the restaurant business. So I just grew up in that restaurant environment, loved everything about it, really. And I knew from an early age, when I was like 15, 16, that I was going to do this for the rest of my life, hospitality. And, at the time I was actually in Korea. I grew up in the States, but I went back home to Korea for high school. And that's when my dad got involved in the restaurant business, and naturally so did I. And I just committed myself to it. And so I identified NYU as a really wonderful program, but also just being in the heart of New York City, it seemed like the place to be, especially as someone who wanted to open a restaurant someday. I don't want that anymore. We'll talk about that too. So I felt like NYU would be a really great place to go to learn about the industry, just get my feet wet in the city. I just felt it was the greatest restaurant city, in my opinion. I still believe so too. So, but just been in restaurant management, working at Soho House, out of Madison Park, Daniel Boulud, Dynex Group, Ritz-Carlton. Most recently, I was at a Korean restaurant called Atomix, which is a 2-Michelin fine dining restaurant in New York City. So I've just really been in restaurant operations and management my whole life. And then this entrepreneurship journey has been a really relatively new thing for me personally. I've only been doing my own business for the last since I moved out to LA, so a year and a half, basically the duration of COVID, I've been an entrepreneur. So that's kind of my story. But yeah, Scott, I'd love to hear about you as well.
I also started out working in restaurants, and I thought also that was what I wanted to do when I was younger. So when I was at NYU, I was working in a lot of bakeries around campus, and I had a realization one day that the restaurant industry is maybe not for me as well. So then I found wine, and I got a wine internship in a wine distributor, and I stayed there for 5 years while I was at NYU as well, working my way up in the company and learning about everything you need to know about wine, and buying wine to selling wine as well. So it's been a fun couple of years. I started my business actually about I would say 6 to 8 months before COVID actually hit. So we were impacted by COVID, and but right now we're on the tail end of things, and things are looking up, which is good.
Yeah, I feel like you and me have a very different way of approaching our time at NYU. It feels like you said you were at this one company for 5 years. So yeah. I was actually like always the guy like, why do you have 1 year here on your resume? Like I always got that question a lot because I bounced around every year. Mainly because I want to get exposed to different things and try different things. But for you, like, I'm just curious how you enjoyed that. Like looking back, would you do it differently? Like, would you have wanted to work anywhere else?
So actually I took I think one summer off. I took a hiatus and I worked in a wine marketing agency in downtown. And I realized that wasn't for me, and that, wine sales is where it's at, frankly. And what I really liked about my job is that, since I loved restaurants, I was still able to interact with all these restaurants by selling wine to them. And, it was a good, in between my childhood dream and my current dream to work in the wine and food industry.
Awesome. And did you have this idea like of did you always want to do your own company, or like how did that come about?
Yeah, so I met my business partner at NYU. He was in Gallatin, and actually we met freshman year, and we didn't speak for
Oh, wow.
a couple of years, and then we randomly met on the GRK on campus. I don't know if you know there's a GRK. I think it closed now, but
Oh, the
we
yogurt
met there.
place.
Yes, yeah, they had
Yeah.
Greek food, yeah. And we saw each other there, and then we started talking. And since I was working in wine, and my business partner also, had ideas as well to do something in the industry as well, and we got together, and we built this brand, which was a long process, from choosing the wine to choosing the right labels and getting the wine over to New York from France. And yeah, over the past couple of like years, we've dealt, with a lot of issues. There was taxes imposed by Trump, there were tariffs on wine. Now we're dealing with, a lot of like inflation. So a lot
Yeah.
of costs are going up, which is every day it's a new challenge.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so we were brought together to talk about entrepreneurship. So I think one of the things I wanted to tackle with you, I feel like entrepreneurship means so many things to different people, because it's such an interesting career, right? Because like you said, there's things that you never knew that you had to tackle and handle, and there's no playbook. There's no playbook of like, if you open up Pair Me Wines, this is how you should do it. There's really not a playbook. So like for you, what is entrepreneurship? Like, what does that mean to you in your definition?
It means, really like every day is a new day, every day is a new challenge. And it's really tackling those challenges on a daily basis, and trying to overcome, everything, and solving problems on a daily basis. Um, and for you?
No, every day looks different for sure. There is no set day, and I don't have a specific business like you do where I sell product. I think for me, like what I do for a living is I actually have a podcast. So naturally I love hosting and doing these conversations and hosting these conversations. But aside from that, I do a lot of consulting work for different restaurants and food and beverage brands. Obviously, I have my two companies as well with Warm Welcome and Mom. And the work I do is a lot of it is community building. So I put together right now on the docket, basically, like every month I've been traveling to a different city where I put together a project called Baker's Box. I wore this on purpose so I could plug it in. It's a project where I bring together like 18 Asian American bakers and pastry chefs in just different cities across the US. So I've done 10 cities so far. I just came back from Austin. I'm going to Houston later this month. And we always like source local. So I find locally based Asian American bakers or pastry chefs, and we put them together. Actually, this is the great part about doing it in a Zoom. Like, like I have all the product there. I just remembered I have this at home. So it's like this. And then you open it, and then it's like, there you go. And then there's like 9 treats. So you get 2 boxes of these for 12, 18. So this project, Baker's Box, is something I do under with Warm Welcome. With Warm Welcome is this like community organization. And the main mission is to amplify like Asian American chefs, founders, restaurateurs, just people in this industry. As an Asian American myself, like navigating the hospitality industry, it's been very challenging at times. And I think for me, entrepreneurship is being able to do what you love and try to make a living off of it, obviously. But for me, it's like, it's been a really interesting journey because you have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. You know what I mean? Like you have the best days and then the worst days. And I think a lot of it is just learning every day, just being humble, being a student of life, student of business, and keeping your ear to the ground and talking to like people like yourself as well, just learning from one another, I think is entrepreneurship.
Was there a specific class at NYU that helped you in your journey, in your entrepreneurship journey?
I don't want to say like a particular class, and I know this is an NYU panel, but I'm going to keep it as honest as possible. I think what I gained the most was actually the relationships and connections through the program. Actually, Dr. Minar has been a wonderful mentor and friend for me personally. I was actually really close to not finishing the program for a lot of reasons, both financial and personal. And Dr. Minart really allowed me and helped me to find the resources to finish the program. So I was really close to not finishing NYU, and I wouldn't even be here today, actually, if it weren't for Dr. Minart. So I think aside from the classes, what I gained the most were the connections with professors, with my colleagues and peers. And then the biggest thing for me were the career fairs. Like those are so helpful for me. Just because those career fairs allowed me to get face time with the best restaurant groups in New York City and, you know, the world really. So classes, I'm like, I mean, you know, there were some like helpful ones, but I think for me personally, I really enjoyed the resources that we had access to more so than the classes. Not saying I was a bad student, but I definitely felt like I spent more time outside the classroom working in restaurants. I'm sure for you as well. Like, I think that's something that's really important for people. I don't know who's tuning in, but if you are a current student, I think it's very important for you to work while studying and going to school. I'm sure you agree, Scott. It's super important, I think, because it's a time for you to take these risks and challenges with the security blanket of being a student. And once you're out in the real world, there's a lot more consequences and things that are in play that I feel like you could kind of not get away with, but it's just a lot safer to take these risks while you're a student, I think. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I agree. I was working, when I first started, I think my freshman year, I was working in a bakery on the weekends in the West Village. And then I started doing wine. I was doing wine tastings on every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then I started, you know, doing like appointments to sell wine at like restaurants and liquor stores. And this was all I was going to classes in the meantime. But I've got to say that the NYU was really nice because I knew I wanted to work at the same time as going to school. And many of the classes, you know, fit my schedule because some of them were in the nighttime. And you can choose your own schedule, and it really worked out for me.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, I think you're also a byproduct of someone that maximized school and then the class hours that we had at SPS. I don't know if I can say the same for a lot of people that went to the program, but that's something I highly recommend too. Like I agree. Like I maximize every day because what other time am I going to be able to live and afford to live in New York City is one thing. But especially if you're an international student, there's a whole nother like kind of legal thing with that being on a student visa like that. It's just, there's so many things that you have access to that I think when you're in it, you don't realize as well. But then now you look back like, wow, like that was such a privilege to be able to do what we did and work at the places we did, because I think those experiences allow us to become entrepreneurs ultimately, right?
Yeah, and you're really connected, you know, you're one subway stop away from work.
Yeah. It's such a crazy program that I feel like it works well for people that want to become entrepreneurs and that want to work for themselves. But I think the biggest thing too is like, how did you take that leap? I think that's always the next question is like, how did you take that leap of faith?
Of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have a lot of passion, you know, it takes a lot of hard work and commitment. And, you know, there's a lot of long days of working on, you know, the project and, you know, putting it all together. And then, you know, one day it all makes sense, you know, after days of like work. And you have to be also supported by the right people. And at the time my boss was very supportive of me in my old job, and he helped me, you know, connect with wineries in France and such, and really grew, you know, the idea of the brand in the city.
Yeah, I mean, how do you like? What gets you up in the morning? Like I that's something that I always think about. Like, what is there a goal that you're working towards with your company that like motivates you to get up and do what you do?
So I'm up early in the morning because my partner is actually in Dubai, so the time difference is that messages in early morning.
Yeah, it's more of a literal. Okay. What's the time difference? Like, what time do you have to get up in New York to be able to be on a call with your partner?
Usually I would say 8 a.m. in New York time is about like 4 or 5 p.m. in Dubai, I believe. So when he's finishing up his day, I'm starting my day. So
so it's like the reverse.
Yeah. So which is also helpful because, like working 24 hours in a day, basically, because, when I'm sleeping, he's working, and when he's sleeping, I'm working. So it works out.
That's incredible, man. That's something I didn't think about. Now I feel like I should find a partner in Dubai or something, or on the other side of the world. We're operating 24 hours. Yeah.
The productivity is increased.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. We actually got a Q&A. I think we're gonna try to take these as we go along, right, Scott? Anonymous attendee. Okay. It says, how do you manage having two businesses at once? For me, like it's actually the two businesses I have a lot of overlap. They're both rooted in community building. So with Warm Welcome, the way I try to kind of clarify it is with Warm Welcome deals with more Asian American communities. So Asian American chefs, restaurateurs, founders. But what I found very challenging, and with Warm Welcome was the first company I found, it was a podcast initially. That's how it started. As a Korean American specifically, Asian American, that term Asian American is so it's a terrible term, mainly because Asia is a huge continent. It's the biggest continent in the world. And I feel like lumping all of these countries into a checkbox that's like Asia or Asian American, it's very challenging to do the work that I do and not feel like I'm doing enough. I feel like I naturally skew more East Asian, mainly because that's the category I'm in. So I try to do a better job of highlighting Asia across the whole spectrum, but throughout the process, it's been very difficult. So I started my second company, Mom, with a co-founder, like Scott did with his partner, because I realized that it's so hard to scale things yourself. It is very difficult to work just solo. It does get lonely, as an entrepreneur. And then B, I started Mom because I'm Korean American. I was like, I really want to do something that was more of a personable thing for myself personally. And again, With Warm Welcome is a wonderful company and I love working on it, but there are times where I feel that it's even like a step removed from myself. I try to not insert myself too much because that would skew a certain way. So for Mom is just Korean, the Korean community. Right now we do these like monthly pop-up markets all around Los Angeles. It launched in January, so it's a very new company. And every month we do these pop-up markets in like Hollywood, Koreatown, Arts District. The next one is going to be in Culver City on the west side. I don't know if there's any LA listeners at all, but we'd love to see you there. So that happens once a month and we bring together like anywhere from 30 to 60 Korean makers. And these could be like ceramicists, florists, artists, just any like local Korean small business owner we try to have. And yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. But just to answer that question, it's not difficult, and I'm able to do it because there's a lot of overlap with that. It's all about community building, connecting the dots. It's not too different, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So who else did it? Like Jack Dorsey ran Square and Twitter together at the same time for a little bit, and he like managed to pull it off for a while until he wasn't able to. So now I'm like, okay, maybe I need to focus on one thing. But yeah, I just didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket, Scott. Like with COVID, I think that's something I learned is it's important to have different revenue streams. It's important to have different projects in case one doesn't happen for whatever reason. You have plan B, C, D, right? So that's something I learned during COVID, which is why I have two businesses. But how did COVID affect you too, by the way? Because I know you started like right before it all kind of came crashing down.
Yeah. So pre-COVID, I was my brand was distributed through a French wine distributor in New York, and after COVID hits, it was sort of like back to square one. We had a lot of restaurants that closed down. The liquor industry was totally different than it was before, and we had the idea just to start from scratch again. So we left the wine distributor, and we sort of like started the journey by ourselves, meaning that we use now a third-party importer and distributor to import and distribute the wines in New York. And for the past year and a half, I've been doing most of the selling. And it differs from before is that before we had a team of I believe there was like 10 to 15 people, selling the wine in New York. And then I took over and I replaced 10 or 15 people selling the wine, which it's been fun. It's been a bit hectic, but it's COVID was a positive, it was positive for the business, for it to move along. I would say it made us start again from scratch and see what can happen.
Scott, do you have any bottles on you right now?
I think behind me, I can grab them. Would you like to see them?
Plug it in. Let's plug it in.
Sure.
No, because I think what Scott does is really cool. Like obviously being in the restaurant industry, I've seen a lot of wine labels myself, but you have such a unique business. So I would love to just visually show people about your bottles.
So the whole concept is about making wine pairing simple. So we have, a wine for seafood, which is a declassified muscadet from like the Loire Valley in France. And in France, everyone knows that, muscadet is a grape for seafood pairing. A lot of people, pair it with oysters, crabs, a lot of shellfish. And basically, we just brought the concept here and put a nice fish on it for people to, get the pairing. Then we also, have a wine for pizza. It's a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo from Italy. And, Montepulciano is a very nice grape. It's very like subtle and it pairs really well, for marinara pizza. And it's just an easy pairing. And then another one of my favorites is the summer salad rosé, which is a blend of Grenache and Syrah from the south of France. And this is for salad pairings because it's very crisp, it's very refreshing, has a bit of like strawberry hints. And yeah, the whole concept of brand is food pairings. I was doing a lot of wine tastings when I first started working in the wine industry, and I realized, many people, they walk into a liquor store and they don't know what wine goes with what, so they're confused by looking at wine labels. Because it's true, wine labels can be very hard to understand. You have to understand where the appellation is from, the names of the grape, where it's positioned on the bottle, and most of the time, the labels are not written in English. If it's from Spain, Spanish, labels. If it's French names. So you have to understand, the difference between chateau, domain, all a bunch of different wordings. And we just wanted to make, it simpler for the consumers to pick the right wines for their meals.
So is it safe to say that you started your company out of a problem that you had personally?
Yes. I am part French, so I understood the wine labels.
Oh, yeah, that's a cheat. Oh, man.
But I saw that there was a need for something like this. And it also, in liquor stores, some stores, are very helpful. The staff is very helpful helping you, but in some stores, there's not really a staff to help you. So if you just browse and you see something that really makes sense to you, and you have like a slice of pizza in your hand, a pie, and then you see a wine called Wine for Pizza, it's like a perfect match.
Yeah, well, as someone who doesn't speak French, I appreciate what you're doing because, like I worked in fine dining, and one of the things that was very daunting for me, because, if you ever worked in fine dining or you have the opportunity to, like, wine is just a necessity. You have to know about it. You have to educate yourself about it. And so I went through the ringer. And one of the biggest challenges I had was just memorizing all those domains and chateaus. And, it's very difficult if you're not a native or anybody that doesn't speak French or Italian. It is a really difficult thing to get into. I think wine is really hard to get into mainly because of that. And I think language is a big barrier.
Language is one of the biggest barriers, and it's all about tasting. There's millions of different types of wines out there, and the only way for people to really understand what wine they like is by just training their palate by trying as much wine as they can and seeing what grape they like, what type of style, and yeah, you have to drink. I wouldn't say you have to get drunk, but you do have to drink a bit.
For sure. That's like the only way. We had a question here in the Q&A from Tristan. I'll read it for you, Scott, and go for it. He said, "What are the top 3 most important daily habits?" That's a good one for you as an entrepreneur to help stay organized, focused, etc.
I personally, I go to the gym every day. I try to do 1 hour of like sports a day in the morning, and I feel that really like focuses you for the day. It really, my job, well, this past year it's been a bit physical because I visit, clients on a daily basis. So I see between 10 to 15 like stores or restaurants every day. So it's a lot of walking around. And, you're mostly also walking around by yourself. You don't have a lot of people to talk to except the clients. So I'm not working in an office. So there's no one, to chat. I have lunch, like I'm like at a park, and it's really important, I would say, to talk to your family as well, to have them in the loop so that you can have some sort of like daily conversation with someone outside of the business.
Nice. I agree with you, except for one thing. I don't go to the gym every day. I think I should do a better job with that. So thanks for reminding me. I've been trying to get on hikes too. There's a lot of great hikes in LA, so I've been trying to enjoy the nature more as well personally. But it is very difficult to schedule in those days for yourself or that time for yourself when you run your own business where you feel responsible for like everything and anything that happens. So I'm actually making more of a conceited effort to do better on taking care of myself, and self-care. I think has been a hot topic and should continue to be a hot topic. But for those that go to the gym every day, this is what I do. I make coffee every day. I think it's important to have a routine though, for sure. Like this routine happens every day around the same time. And I think that's good for me, and I'm sure for Scott, it's good for you to have something like this too, because our days look so different that for me, it's nice to have one constant that doesn't change every day, because every day looks so different and you can get really lost in the day and get overwhelmed and stressed and this and that. But having something to look forward to every morning or every night that is always going to happen is something that I do. And then number two is I don't have a lot of clothes. And that's on purpose. I literally only wear like blue or black. And I hate making decisions early in the morning. And I know it might sound very trivial, but it does take a lot of your energy, right, to like decide what to wear. So I actually don't really, I have this and like a black version of this. So I try to minimize decisions in the morning so I don't get decision fatigue, because I'm making a lot of decisions during the day. And I meet a lot of people during the day too. So I try to get up an hour in the morning. I just block out. Like I don't talk to anybody. I don't look at Instagram. Like I think that's important to have like your space where you can just like, it's important to connect with friends and family, but at the same time, maybe it's just like an hour out of the day where it's like you're just in your own head for a little bit, just to clear your mind. Because for some reason, when you're running your business, a lot of people actually tell you what to do, or like, oh, maybe you should do it like this, or da, 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 da. But while it's important to listen to the outside noise, I also feel that it's important to be able to make your own decisions, because at the end of the day, like you live with it, like you're the one that has to live with those consequences of that decision. So I try to make it a habit. So two things is the coffee that happens in the morning, the 1 hour block of time where I just don't really talk to anybody, so I can just reset my mind and get ready for the day is a daily habit I have. And soon I will go to the gym. Soon, we'll see. That could be a resolution. Yeah.
Go to the outdoor gym. I'm sure the weather in California is nice.
Yeah. Scott, there's something for you here too, and I think this is a good one for you. It says how millennials are ditching wine for hard seltzers and craft beers. Have you experienced that? And if so, how do you attract millennials?
Yeah, so there's been a new trend, the canned drinks, I would say, and the biggest one, is High Noon, because it's sold in liquor stores in New York. Then you have other, canned drinks and beers, which you can find in grocery stores, but it doesn't really involve me, because in New York State, you can't sell wine in grocery stores. You can only sell it in liquor stores. But what I've noticed is that what a lot of people have been telling me is that the can market has replaced sort of like the rosé sales. Last year, rosé sales dipped in liquor stores, and it was replaced by High Noon, because it's the same sort of people who were drinking rosé. They found canned, drinks, hard seltzers, and they've replaced that. But we'll see. It might change. It changes every year, but right now there's so much influx of canned drinks. I walked by a liquor store yesterday, and I saw, Jack Daniel's does their own cans. Like all these big brands are doing their own cans, and the liquor store, doesn't have that much space to carry all the cans. Especially they make less money on cans than they make on wine. So they only select, maybe like 4 out of like the hundreds of cans that they would carry. And it really depends. And I would say, I think the question also mentioned something about millennials, how
Yeah, millennials, specifically millennials. Yeah.
So I think that my wine attracts millennials because I think millennials, they might just be getting into wine, and they want something simple to really help them in their choices. And I would say that also my wine also attracts people that are a bit older than millennials. But when I do wine tastings, I found that millennials mostly buy my wines, and it resonates with them because they're beginning their wine journeys as well. Wine is something that you learn with experience, and it's good that I catch them in the beginning of their journey.
Yeah, totally. I feel like it's a great, you have great wines that are great for like novices or people that just get into it. Not to say it isn't for the drinker.
The important thing also is that there's quality behind the wines, and that's something I try to emphasize with everyone, is that I'm not just sticking a label on a bulk wine bottle. I work with producers in France and Italy, that really care about the wine, and it's been thought out properly.
Awesome. Here's another one.
I have a question.
Korean wave, K-wave, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a real thing that's happening right now that I see is it's happening everywhere. Namely, we've seen it in K-pop, and then now it's moving on to K-drama. I'm sure you are tuning into a K-drama as we speak on Netflix, but Korean excellence has been kind of seen, I think, in different industries. And I definitely, it was a factor for sure when I started my company Mom. One of the reasons why I wanted to start my company Mom is because we saw all this K-pop and K-drama, and now K-food. So a lot of like Korean food is becoming hot and trendy. There was another part of it that I felt like wasn't getting the love, which was actually the Koreans in America doing their own things, running their own business and brands. And I felt like a lot of the spotlight was shined on more entertainment. And so what I do is I bring more artisans and craftsmen and small businesses into the space where we can highlight all of them at once. So I'm definitely aware that we are experiencing and going through this Korean wave, and definitely am trying to, take advantage of it in some ways, because if it's anybody that's going to educate the general consumer or public on Korean culture, I would hope that it's someone like me who really identifies a Korean American, going back to Korea for high school too. And so it's been a big factor. And I think there's a lot of interest in Korean culture in general right now. So one of the biggest missions for my company Mom is actually to educate people about like Korean holidays, Korean traditions, Korean customs, but at the same time making it fairly approachable for those that aren't Korean or non-Asians too, obviously. So that's definitely something I think about. Let's see, this is a good one. And I was going to ask you this too, Scott, is do you have a mentor helping you launch your businesses / becoming entrepreneurs, and how do you identify them?
Yeah, so I had a couple of mentors. I had one mentor, which was my old boss, and he really, I was working for him, so we were very close, and he really helped me, in the whole process of, choosing the wines, and the labels, and making sure, that you're able to sell them in New York and such. And then, when I left like that company, we sort of, got less. We weren't that close anymore. But along the way, I found, a couple of other people that helped, especially someone who I have a new mentor who really helps me in the wine industry, and he's actually a sales manager for a couple of chateaus in Bordeaux, and so he sells fine wine, so it's a bit different than me, but he's experienced everything that I'm experiencing now, so he's been really helping me try to make the right decisions.
Awesome. How did you find those recent mentors? Are they through like work?
So that was all through networking, you know. So in the previous company, I had met him. He represented one of the wineries that the distributor carried, and you know we went out for dinner and we became friends, and we like the same. We like to cook, and we both like wine, so it worked out.
Yeah, I feel like mentors are everywhere. If you look for them, I think it's more of an attitude that you need to have as an entrepreneur, where like you know everything, but you also don't know everything. And so I think just being open to everyone's feedback. Again, like I said, it is important to have this set vision of what you want, but I think seeking mentorship is definitely important. For me personally, and this might sound cheesy, but like I've always considered my dad a really close mentor of mine. And like you said, Scott, I think it's important to be close with either family or have some like a confidant, like someone that you can really lean on and be your sounding board. I think I consider them to be my mentors too. I think mentors are anybody that's willing to listen to you, give you sound advice. We go through so many things every day that it's important to have that almost outlet, right? So that we can try to keep a level, calm-headed mind as much as possible throughout the day. So I think mentors are all over. It could be your parents, it could be your friend, or someone you meet through work. There's a technical question, Scott, if you want to answer this one. It says, always wonder what a sulfite was. I'm gonna let you take that. I can't answer that one.
Well, sulfites are basically, you know, like it preserves the wine basically. And sometimes, you know, people are allergic to sulfites. It can give you, you know, a bit of the hangover the next day. But it's important. So natural wine, I don't know if natural wine has like less sulfites, and it has basically close to none of sulfites. And really what happens is that's why it tastes a bit funky. You know, the wines with sulfites really, you know, that's what wines you want to like. Well, I'm not a natural wine drinker, so I like old school wines, you know, made like old fashioned way. And it's really, it really helps, you know, the wine, you know, travel, because you know the wines, they're coming in containers from Europe, and they're going across the sea. So there's a lot of, they can become bottle shock, and sulfites, you know, can also help the preservation process of that as well.
Sulfites with Scott, nice. Do you have to be extroverted to be an entrepreneur? What's your Enneagram? Did you do your MBTI like personality test? Do you know yours?
I did not.
Okay. Would you consider yourself to be extroverted?
Yeah, I mean, for my job, I think you have to be extroverted, because you're talking to so many different people. And yeah, I enjoy talking to people, but at the same time, you know, I like being by myself, you know, going fishing, you know, reading a book, and, you know, doing solo activities as well. I think it's a balance between both, which is really important.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's like being an entrepreneur is like a switch. It's like an on and off
Yeah.
switch. So you don't have to be extroverted as a person, but for the job and for what you do, I've naturally found that you kind of have to be. Because especially I'm sure for the work you do, but for mine as well, like what I do for a living is like connect the dots for people, and I introduce people to each other. I do collaborations, events, and stuff like that. So, you know, even today, like after this, I'm talking like 10 different people today. So I kind of have to enjoy people and being around people and getting energized, being around people. So while it's not like a requirement, obviously, like I know a ton of introverted entrepreneurs myself. I found that it's helpful to be, or at least be able to be socially comfortable around a lot of people. And I think there's ways to practice that, obviously. So I know it's not like an overnight thing. I think you and we both worked in restaurants, and in restaurant situations, you just have to be, right? Yeah, so that's something that I realized was really important. Let's see. Love the pyramid labels. Nice. Can you speak about who designed them and what the design process was?
So actually, I had a friend who's a graphic designer, and who now works for the UN. He does their graphic design, and well, he helped me. You know, we went through a whole bunch of labels, and we were telling him what to do, and you know, I went through like thousands of different types of labels, and we decided on this one. It was, I guess it was sort of a high school friend, and then we stayed in touch in college, and he really, I don't know anything about, designing labels. I'm more on the sales side. So I was telling him mostly, this is what I want to label, and it was a bit annoying for him, I assume, because every single, I was like, this is wrong, you should change this. So it was
Oh
a lot of
God.
technical. I was the annoying type.
But you're happy with it now, right?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And I would say, the process was about, it was like the 6 to 7 months process, of trying different labels. I printed out labels on bottles and then went around and showed it to people, saw their reactions, and, even made a last minute change to a label. I think the labels are also always a work in process. You figure out what people like, what people don't. For example, a lot of people are saying, for the rosé, why do you have the word summer? You should just keep the word salad because it's year round. And then, but then the other thought is that, it's summertime. So people want to be reminded, that the rosé brings, happiness to them in the summer. So it's a lot of, I would say a lot of things can change on a quarterly basis. And yeah, finding the designer, I think you can just go through like a network. I personally, I knew my friend was liked to do graphic design, and he helped me out. And there's also a community of graphic designers. I've used also in the past a website called Fiverr, and they do a bit of like work as well. We outsource like sometimes some images, and we buy the images from the person who designs them, and then the graphic designer then puts them on the label and produces it.
Nice. Personally, I feel like you don't have to be a designer because you can't possibly do it all. But something I found to be very helpful for me personally is I actually know how to use Illustrator and Photoshop and most of the Adobe suite. So, if I have someone design something, I'm able to kind of tweak it and make it the way I kind of want it to be. So obviously it depends on what you want to do and the company you want to begin. But something I think is important is like that literacy in knowing these design programs, or like the extensions and the different photo formats. I think educating yourself on the foundation of that is really important too. It's been really helpful for me, at least, to be able to because I do my own website, I do most of the branding myself, which, it's a lot, but at the same time, it ends up being something I like and I want, right? And I think that's a big part of what we do too, is definitely the design and packaging, and that's so important, especially in today's world.
Yeah, packaging is everything, I would say, especially in my business.
Yeah, because you're next to like all different labels, right? And that's people.
Yeah,
I think people still look at labels when they're choosing bottles.
Yeah, so that's usually how people choose wine. Is they walk around and they see what label they like, or if you have like a real wine, someone who knows wine a lot, they might turn the bottle around and see who's the importer or the distributor, and say, oh, this company imports a lot of good wine, and go from there. But typically it's like, the at first glance is really when you're selling the wine to a customer, you have to get their attention.
Yeah, awesome. Any other questions?
So Baker's Box, do you ship like all around the country, or?
Oh, no, I can't. I don't want to. I hate dealing with shipping. It's like a 1-day pop-up in a different city, and especially with what it is, like baked goods and it's pastry, so you have to consume it within like 2-3 days typically. Okay. So it's very difficult to find shipping and work with shipping. So right now I personally fly out to a city every month, and these boxes I ship in advance to somebody that I have on site that will help me, and then we pack it together the same day. So the way it works logistically is like a month plus out, I'll find the bakers that want to be a part of this project. I'll find a space to host this event. And then all the bakers will drop off their product to the space that I use. It's usually like a restaurant or a bakery. And then we build these boxes, we put them in, and then people pick it up that same day. So it's not something that's available all the time. It's actually just like a 1-day pop-up that happens across the country once a month. So no shipping yet. But I think for me, like where this is actually the last year that I'm doing this, because it just hasn't been a sustainable way. Just traveling. I'm on the road a lot, quite a bit, and it's getting difficult the more I do it. I think it's definitely the mileages are like weighing on my body. Thankfully, we're both young, Scott, so it's fine right now. But I don't want to break my body. So this will be the last year of that, and then I'm working on a book. So this is going to be turned into a book eventually, which will talk about like all the cities will be a chapter. And then I will be doing all the writing for the contextual piece of it, because there's so many stories that come out of this project. Like the only reason I can pull this off in cities across the country is actually because of the kindness of strangers that I meet on like Instagram. You know what I mean? Like it's incredible how this project pulls in the right energies and the right people along on the journey. So I'm turning those stories into a book, and then each chapter will be the city in which I did the box. And, I have illustrations of all the pastries too, so that will live in there. And we'll also ask a few bakers to contribute recipes if they'd like. So it's going to be a kind of like a storytelling cookbook, coffee table book situation that will be amplifying like Asian bakers and pastry chefs. So it's going to have like 18 chapters, I think, because we're doing 9 cities. We did 9 last year. We're doing another 9 this year. And, I actually added 2 Canadian cities this year. So now technically it's not just Asian American, but I'm dropping the American, and it's just going to be like Asians, because I'm working with Asian Canadians too now. So I added Vancouver and Toronto to the list this year. So yeah, I just don't have any, I don't know how you do it. If you ship wine, Scott, shipping is such a disaster. And oh my gosh, like, thinking about it stresses me out,
Yeah. And did you have an event in New York? Did you do one of these in New York? Yep.
Yeah. So the first one was actually in New York City. And it launched in March of 2021. So it's still a very new concept and idea. New York was actually the first city, mainly because of my connection that I have already in New York. And then after New York, we went to LA, where I'm now. And then it was like New York, LA, Chicago, Boston, Philly, DC, back to the West Coast, San Francisco, Portland, and Seattle. Seattle was the last stop last year in November. So it's like a March. It was from March to November, 9 cities over the course of those 9 months. And then I just started this tour again last month. So again, March to November this year. And going to Houston later. But yeah, it's been incredible, man. I honestly didn't think this would be something I do, but that's just how this journey is. I feel like entrepreneurship is seizing opportunities and doing what you think is right, going with your gut feeling, making decisions and living with your decisions. And it's been really crazy. Like I definitely don't want to open a restaurant, that's for sure. I'm pretty happy doing what I'm doing now. Yeah.
Any other questions or?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I guess I'll end with a question from myself is, what are you looking forward to like in the next, like, what are your biggest goals that you have for yourself and your company? And maybe we'll hold you to it when we revisit this webinar.
I'm actually I'm changing to a big distributor in New York, New Jersey, and they're one of the biggest distributors in America. And so they're actually taking over my brand next month, and they have a team of 25 people to sell in New York. And slowly, would be to sell to different states. We hired a national sales manager who was the national sales manager for a big Belgian beer. And he's slowly been, getting us, in other states. So we sent out product to Nebraska and Alabama last month. And, the goal would be to be in all 50 states. And this year, at least 25 of them would be great. And go from there. I would say it's a long process. I've waited 2.5 years for this. And it was in the beginning, it was me doing everything. And now finally getting, you know, a team in place and the ability, you know, to scale is really my focus the past couple of months.
Congratulations, that's huge, man. It's the next step.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Let's see. Personally, for me, this is like a NYU panel exclusive. Is I just signed like an LOI on a space for June. It's going to be like a 1 month pop-up space here in LA, where for the first time, instead of like having a pop-up market once a month over a day, we're actually going to be taking over a space for the entire 30 days. So I'm really excited about that and transitioning my brand, which has been mainly digital, into the physical space and trying out like a brick and mortar concept in June. And I think I'm trying to work towards like where you're going to right now is building a team. That's where I want to be next, having a team of people that I can trust and that believe in the vision. And then hopefully, you know, I want like a permanent brick and mortar store for mom, which would be a store that curates and features local Korean brands and businesses, along with like events and workshops that get programmed into the space as well. So that's something I'm working towards. And the Baker's Box book is a work in progress too, hopefully for next year.
Cool.
Thank you
Where
so
would be
much
the
everyone
space?
for tuning in.
Well, one last, what was going to be the space?
Oh, the space. Oh yeah, it's a space in Culver City in LA, on the west side. It's at a place called Platform, and so Platform has Roberta's from Brooklyn. So this is like the only LA outpost of Roberta's, and so they have Roberta's, Blue Bottle, Sweet Green. You're kind of like typical, you know, brands like Boba Guys is there, Blue Bottle. Aesop is there too, but yeah, it's a really well developed. I don't want to say mall or plaza. It's a really unique development. But we're taking a store there for the month of June. So if anybody happens to be in LA, would love to see you come through.
Well, I want to jump in and just thank Arnold and Scott again for their time and sharing their expertise and their journeys with us. And thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.